Hey creative crowd, how are you doing? Today we're gonna do the top 10 new additions to Affinity Designer 1.7. So this is a short kind of recap overview of the best features. There is a really long list of things that have been improved. Even the official post in the forum says it's too much to list them all. So in this video, we are looking at the best things that you can use right now to improve your workflow. My name is Olivio, I'm a professional designer from Vienna, Austria, and I want to thank all of my patrons who support me and make these videos possible. That's super important. Thank you very much. Let's get started. So the first thing, and that is amazing to have in here, is an isometric mode that supports you in creating isometric graphics like landscapes, cars, any kind of cool thing, a cute village, stuff like that. If you wonder what is isometric, you will see in a second. So what you do is you go up to View and then to Studio, and then you go to Isometric. And you get this little window and it's going to warn you that you have to have a grid enabled that is in isometric mode. So click on Modify Grid. They added a button that's very nice from them, and it will switch over automatically. At least for me it does. It switches over automatically to an isometric mode. So that's very nice. Be sure you set the grid color to something that is visible to you depending on the color of your background. So I have a white background. I select a bright pink so I can see the grid very well. You might wonder, but where is your grid? I can't see a grid right now. Reason for that is I didn't enable the grid now because I want to show you how to do that. So go to View and then you go to Show Grid and bam, there it is. This is an isometric grid. So it is kind of 3D, but not really. So basically isometric is called 2.5D because it's 2D, but it looks a little bit 3D. And what you do with that is on the planes on the right side here in our isometric window, you can see it supports you to create a front, a side, and a top view. So you want to use all three of them, and I'm going to show you how. So for example, we select a rectangle, and usually you would expect a rectangle to be rectangular, but because now we are in isometric mode, it's not longer rectangular in the 2D concept, but in the isometric concepts. You can see here that this, let's change the color real quick to a nice blue. There we go. And now you can see this is kind of 3D-ish, and you can see how useful this could be to create, for example, a 3D city with skyscrapers and stuff like that. So let's go to the side, and now we can create a side. You see here, it supports me to do that. I can switch the color a little bit. Let's make this a little bit darker, for example, and then we go to front and we will draw out a front. Let's start from here. It supports me with doing that. There we go. And let's make this a little bit darker again. And you can see that we have a kind of 3D, so 2.5 looking shape. And this is super easy, super fast to create. Let's turn off the grid so you can see the full thing. So that is very nice. That is so good to have and have this support, and it makes the workflow so much easier and faster to create these isometric graphics. And I will do tutorials on how to do them. Let's go to our next part. So the next addition, and by the way, before we go to the next part, this is extremely important. We are still in isometric mode, even though it's not visible anymore. Every of your rectangles will look like this. So if you want to turn that back, you have to go down here to Grid Settings and click on either Basic or Automatic. Let's click on Basic, and this turns it back into a normal 2D shape. That's super important. If you don't know that, you will be super confused and search forever why this is happening. Turn back your grid, the grid modify or the grid settings. It's super important. Okay, let's go to the shapes now. So now what we can do is we can have custom shapes. And again, this makes the workflow super faster and easier and more convenient. And by the way, if you want me to create a shape hack for you, please write in the comments if you would like that. And shapes are over here. On this symbol, click here. You have a list of shapes here, and this list always has been a little bit limited. So now what you can do, if I click on the tool, I have this wheel up here. And there you have the 3 little lines. You click that also, and then you click on Manage Presets. And this gives you a larger list that you can use as shapes. But the more important part about this is you can see here it says Import Presets, Export User Presets. You have filters you can apply. You can create categories. So all of this is super useful, and you can now create your own shapes that you use a lot for your designs, and you can set them up in here and then have them in your shape list so you can conveniently access them and use them super easy, super quick. Like I said, if you want me to create some cool shapes for you so you can build your own stuff, write in the comments and I will do something like that. Okay. Let's go on to the next edition in 1.7, and that is alternate histories. And this is something you will also find in Affinity Photo. It's very, very useful. If you don't see the history windows, you can see right now, normally the history window is right under the layers. Down here where it says Transform and Navigator, there should be a tab that says History. Not turned on my screen because I want to show you how to find that. So again, we go up to View and then to Studio, and then we go to History. In this case, it pops up in the middle because I dragged it out, but you can snap it down here or any other position where you want to have it. I would leave it down there so when you watch other tutorials, you can easily find them. So, but I will drag it out now so you can see on the screen what is going on. And you can see here we have a history of everything I have done so far. And now if I would go back, for example, to this, and then I would draw a new shape here, and you can see it really turned everything back. So also the grid mode is now back in isometric mode again. You can now see that my history has changed. All the things that have happened after this step are gone. And this is how it worked in the old version. They have been gone forever, deleted. You couldn't access them anymore. But now you have alternate histories. And this is this little sign here, this little symbol with the 3 dots and the 2 lines. And when you click on that, you can see that the list of the history is changing. So I can go back to my old history. And this is extremely important, especially with vector graphics where you have so many steps. Now you can go back, try an alternate design. And if you decide the alternate new version doesn't look as good as the old version, you can just go back to the old version. That is extremely useful and very, very powerful. And yeah, so this is a very, very nice function to have. Good. So this is how that works. Let's go on to our next thing that has been added. And this is another thing you will also find in Affinity Photo. Let's create some layers here real quick. Let's also make a text layer. Write hello. And yeah, so we have 2 layers now. And what you can do now is you can right click on the layer and you can down here select from this range of colors. So I would suggest write down in a file which color is for what. So take some time, decide on that. You can of course modify it later on, but build this into your workflow because especially with vector graphics, you have a lot of layers because a lot of stuff is built from these basic shapes. So it's very easy to have 100+ layers in vector graphics. So if you always would have a certain color for a certain thing, for example, you could say each of the yellow layers is a background layer and the green layers are for the main characters and stuff like that. And the red layers are for text and stuff like that. So you get a really fast, easy overview when you open a file, even an old file that here you have worked months ago. Of course, the function is new, but in the future months ago. You open it, you immediately know which layer is doing what and why it is there. So that's a very, very powerful function for making your workflow a lot easier and better to understand. Let's go on to the next function. And this is something I really love. And of course, because it's for artistic reasons extremely useful, is in the pen, we now have a Scalp Mode. It's limited to the pen. I would like to see that for the brush too. For the moment, it's just for the pen, but that's a really cool start and it's extremely useful. So what is the Scalp Mode? Let's say you draw something and then you decide, oh, this doesn't look the way I want it to look. So usually you would go in here and either draw it completely new, or you would go in here and move the nodes around, and both of them would be a hassle and not that nice to do, especially when you would create a shape from your pen line. But what you can do now is up here, you see you have Sculpt. So you click and turn the Sculpt Mode on. Did I turn it on or off? No, I turned it on. That's great. Okay. All right. So it's turned on and you can see that I can draw anywhere on the line, and this will replace the line or that part of the line, and I can change that. So that's super easy. And what I said before with the shape, let's make this a shape. I move this over here, then I use my node and snap these together. So now it's a shape. I can fill it with a color, and now that I have the shape, I can still use my pen to sculpt this. Whoops, sorry, I have to select it first and then I use my pen. So you have to see these nodes that they are selected. And then if I draw in here, okay, this is the presentation. Kind of, yeah. Anyways, so draw on the line and it will change the line to whatever you draw new. You see, so this is super useful, super easy to use. You have to have it selected and you have to start to draw on the line and then connect it to another part to the line. So it is actually recognizing that you try to sculpt something, but you can see how useful this is in adapting shapes and kind of correcting things. Okay. Let's go on to the next thing that is new in Affinity Photo 1.7. I have to look on my list what I wrote down. We have sub brushes, and this is really cool. At the same time makes me a little bit sad, and the reason for that is when you click on brushes, no sub brushes. You click here on more, no sub brushes. Where are the sub brushes? The reason is because the sub brushes are only in the pixel mode. And they are only pixel brushes. And that is really kind of limiting. It's super nice to have that. I'm not complaining. So you click here on brushes and now you can see here I have the sub brush tab in here. So let's go to brushes over here. And let's say, for example, we take a marker brush. It looks like this. And now I could add another sub brush. And there's three things you can do with that. You can click on add round, which adds a round basic brush. You can click on add bitmap, and this would add a texture basically that is a new brush. So I would suggest you make a PNG with a transparent background in black and white. So you can use that. You can also, no, you can't create vector brushes because it's a pixel brush. So you can only use like pixel nozzles, pixel textures to create a new brush. Or the third thing that is the easiest of them all is that you can go in here and just drag a brush in here. And you can see now I have both brushes on top of each other interacting with each other. So that is very nice to have, and you can do a lot of things, and I will create a brush pack especially so brushes are prepared to work beautifully with each other. So you can, from a set of a certain number of brushes, you can create really interesting sub brushes, a really huge number of sub brushes, or like sub brush combinations is what I mean. Okay, let's go back to our video. And I would like to have this for pixel for vector brushes too, but right now it's only for pixel brushes. And this is kind of limiting because on a pixel brush you can't change the shape afterwards. When I have, let's delete this real quick. When I have a vector brush like this, it's a line, and I can go in here and change the shape in any way I want, and also I can change the brush texture afterwards and the size. And these are all things you cannot do with the pixel brush, so that's kind of sad. But I hope they will add the sub brushes also as vector brushes. For now, just pixel brushes, but still really cool and extremely powerful. Let's go on to our next step. And this is another thing you will also find in Affinity Photo. I will quickly create some shapes here. Let's make the other one, let's make 2 orange shapes. And this is an HLS adjustment layer. So click down here in your layers on HLS adjustment, HLS here, you find it here. Click there. I will pull this over everything like that. And usually this would change everything, every color in your creation. And this new function is especially useful if you have these kind of flat designs with solid colors, because you can really isolate colors. And what you can do now is you can click on one of these color circles down here and then use the color picker to select a certain color. And now if I move this around, it will only change every shape with that color, or any kind of that color will be changed. The reason why I said solid colors is more useful is you can see that you have 4 points here, and you can decide, this is basically in the middle between these 4 points is the source color you have actually selected, and then the other points around that adjust which other colors, which range of colors will be included in this kind of change. But in a gradient, it kind of looks a little bit pixelated. It's not 100% ideal how that works, so I like it most for solid colors, but try it out. You can do some really interesting artistic things with that, and of course it makes it super fast and convenient to adjust colors with this new HLS adjustment without having to select all the different elements that have this color in your design. Okay, let's go on to our last new addition, and that is also extremely useful. Let's, for example, I will write a text here. Let's write an A. There we go. I will right click and convert to curves, and I will use my node tool. Good. So you can see here we have these nodes, and in the old version, I only could select them with this box. And this is not always very useful if you want to select some but not others. It would be kind of work intense to go in there and select and then deselect others. What you can do now is you hold your Alt key and it turns into a lasso. And so I can say I want to have these, and then I also want to have these 2 over here. And then I go back with my lasso, and now I've only selected these nodes and I can move them around. So you can see here, I don't know, it's not that useful in this case, but you can see how you would be able to create interesting designs and select only the nodes that you need for your design. So that is a very powerful new addition to how the node tool works and how you can select the nodes and then adjust them together with each other. So that's very, very powerful. By the way, a 9th thing that also I want to point out is you have brush symmetry. So that's also, it's kind of an addition to my video real quick. And again, this is only for the pixel brush. Another thing that's kind of sad, because this would be extremely powerful for the vector brush. But when you go into the vector brush, there is no setting for symmetry. But when you go to the pixel mode or pixel persona and you click on the pixel brush, you have here symmetry. And when you click this, you can see that this will in symmetry draw out things. So that is very nice. And you can go up to 16. There we go. And create some really crazy kind of designs. It gets very slow when you use textured brushes. So let's delete this and go with a basic brush. Where do we have the basic brushes? Down here. So you can see here, you can do some really nice designs, but keep in mind, those are pixel designs because it's pixel brushes. So have your file in the right resolution, in the right size if you want to print that or stuff like that, because it's not vector, it's pixelated. So that's a little bit of a downside, but at the same time, super cool addition. to the brushes in the pixel mode. And this is of course also available in Affinity Photo because that's the pixel program. Okay, thank you very much for watching. I hope you liked this update on the 8+1 cool new things that are added to Affinity Photo Affinity Designer 1.7. Thank you very much for watching. If you want to see nice tutorials, suggest topics to me in the comments below the video. And yeah, thanks for watching. See you in the next video. Bye.